My name is Joe Samaniego, and I'm joined today with Kobe Lambeth from the podiumfinish.net. Kobe, you've been busy. You've been like the Kyle Busch when it comes to auto racing, reporting and journalism. You were reporting Sunday at the Coca-Cola 600, the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, and now again. Tell us about all the events that you covered and everything going on.
Yes, Joe. I've been pretty busy. I'm actually really happy that motorsports is back because during those 2 months it was really hard after going through a long off season and then you've waited so long for it to come back so I can get back on the grind and then we had that unfortunate 2 month 2 month shutdown. But we're back now, and it's going to be busy while until we catch up the NASCAR schedule. But it should definitely be something to keep me busy for a while. And there's one thing that happened during Monday night's Osco 300 and the NASCAR Xfinity Series race that I wanted to talk about. So in the closing stages of Monday night's NASCAR Xfinity Series race, Tommy Joe Martins was on pace to score his first ever top 10 in NASCAR. Period. The front runners made contact, which ultimately collected Martins, sending him hard into the inside wall on the backstretch. So Martins Motorsports is a small team, one of the underdogs in the garage on a tight budget. So they didn't really need that costly crash. Tommy Joe Martins was very upset following the incident, and rightfully so. So here's my question for you, Joe. For the underdog teams in the garage, why is it so important for them to bring the car home in one piece each race?
Definitely, it's very important to bring the car home in one piece. I know a lot of times, a lot of these teams are pretty much running on a shoestring budget. They got a sponsor from a buddy of theirs, someone that's just helping paying the bills to get by a little bit here and there. And then even though these cars, especially the Xfinity series, they have the composite body, so they are a little cheaper, it's still a very pricey sport to participate in. One good example I could think of right away in the truck series is Jordan Anderson. He used to have a pickup truck with a smaller trailer. He had to be very careful, take care of the equipment, because while some of the bigger teams, the drivers could just race hard, try to win, even just bring home the steering wheel and a trophy. They're congratulated. Owner operator has that big challenge of trying to keep the costs and expenses really low for the team. But you do bring up a good point, especially Martin's Motorsport. A lot of the small teams in the Xfinity series and the truck series, and of course a lot of the lower series we see, whether it's the Formula series, WRC2 as well. But yeah, definitely. I know that was one of the surprises you saw. What were some of your reactions from the truck race?
Well, it was definitely a stat 40 truck field. It felt really crazy seeing 40 trucks out there on the track. Since usually the maximum limit is 32 trucks, but given everything that's going on, NASCAR decided to expand the field to 40, and overall we had 47 trucks entered the Truck Series race at Charlotte, which was really crazy. And it was sad to see, 7 trucks not be able to show up. And I actually think if we had qualifying like we did for the Coca-Cola 600, then we could have definitely lined them up and had qualifying for the Truck Series race to give those 7 drivers who didn't have a chance to race a fair shot in the field. And as we all saw last night, the bounty hunter Chase Elliott claimed his prize by defeating the Candyman Kyle Rowdy Busch.
Yeah, he claimed the bounty. I know he was pretty excited. The portions of that is gonna, or I believe all of that is gonna go to a charity, especially with the COVID-19 relief effort. This has really shown online. We've been seeing it. The rivalry between Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott has really started to gain momentum. Even though both drivers have said, "Okay, we talked about what happened in Darlington, we put it behind us." Still, we saw them race each other hard. Coca-Cola 600. In fact, Kyle Busch consoled Chase Elliott after his heartbreaking loss. But then the two of them raced each other really hard for the win. Do you think this is a really healthy rivalry that we're starting to see brew and really going to benefit NASCAR in particular?
Oh, absolutely. As we know, Chase Elliott is NASCAR's most popular driver right now, and he's probably going to be the most popular driver for the foreseeable future. But I think if Haley Deegan is able to progress and get to the Cup Series, I think Haley Deegan is definitely going to challenge him for most popular driver. But as we were talking about Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott, when you have NASCAR's most popular driver Chase Elliott and NASCAR's most polarizing driver Kyle Busch, coming together and having this little rivalry, I think is definitely going to benefit the sport as a whole. And although I don't really expect this rivalry, well, for now, I don't expect this rivalry to like turn very nasty. I think it's going to be one of those rivalries where they're going to be where they're going to be very competitive. They're going to race each other hard, and it's going to be like one of those rivalry. It's going to be like a respectful one. You're like they're going to go out there and be like, I want to beat that guy every race, but it's not going to be like if he like gets into you early in the race and sends you up the hill. It's not going to be like I'm gonna go fight him after the race on pit road. I think it's just going to be one of those hard fought but respectful rivalries.
Yes, it sort of reminds me a little bit about especially 98, 99, even the 2000s when we had Mark Martin and Jeff Gordon, Ford versus Chevrolet. That was a really healthy rivalry. Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt as well too. A lot of good rivalries where you didn't see the drivers try to just take each other out, but just really race really hard, try to beat the other person, representing, of course, their own team, sponsors, brand, and it does get a lot of excitement as well. I know a lot of folks look fondly at the Jeff Gordon, Mark Martin rivalry. Of course, Dale Jarrett was in there too. In fact, he got the championship in '99. So a lot of good stuff, and it's really exciting for everyone following the sport, and definitely for all our followers watching. Leave a comment. Let us know what are some of your favorite racing rivalries. It doesn't have to be just NASCAR. Of course, Formula One has had some great rivalries as well. Fernando Alonso versus Lewis Hamilton. MotoGP with Alexander Rossi versus Marc Marquez. So be sure to leave a comment. We may read it here on the air. So I know definitely, Cody, you've been really busy covering everything. Of course, it all started Sunday with the Coca-Cola 600, in which we saw dirty air play a huge disadvantage for most of the field. If you're the leader, once you got that clean air, you were hard to beat, even with no tires, as Joey Logano proved to win the third stage. Were you sort of surprised by how important clean air was, especially with this aero package?
Oh, absolutely not. As always, clean air has always been king, and with this package, like the dirty air is like it's really bad, and the only and as we saw all throughout the race, tires didn't really matter that much at all. As long like you could take two tires while everybody else took four, and if you had and if or stay out and if you had the clean air, you were good, and it was gonna be very difficult for the car in second place to get by you because with this package the dirty air is just like so bad and it's really hard to pass the leader unless like lap traffic comes into place where it slows up the leader and then the car who's running second is able to get a huge drive off the corner and pass them for the lead.
Yeah, and strategy definitely was a little hard, especially with the dirty air. It seemed to be, since the race had four stages, each stage was 100 laps, everybody was sort of confined to the strategy of split the stage in half when it comes to fuel and tires, because we're going to pit during the stage break caution. Did that really limit the teams to where you couldn't really try anything different? Because it seemed the tires were not falling off like what we used to see, especially in Darlington. And then with the dirty air, it just made it to where it was really hard, except picking up positions in the pits.
Yeah. Honestly, it just seemed like the dirty air was just so bad that teams didn't really have a choice. You either had to gain on pit road or stay out and try to keep the clean air. We saw later in the race, Matt DiBenedetto. I believe he stayed out and he was able to hold the lead for a little bit, but he just didn't have. But he didn't have the a good enough car to stay out front. So it's not just like with the dirty air. You also have to have a car strong enough to stay out front in the clean air, or it's not gonna work out the way you expect it to.
Yeah, it's a good example, of course, when Joey Logano and three others all stayed out. Logano was able to hold off, get the stage win, but we saw Kevin Harvick and a couple of others that stayed out on all tires just fall straight to the bag in the closing stages. Now, you mentioned staying out. The big talk, of course, after the race was Chase Elliott, Alan Gustafson. Seems like they were a sitting duck. If they had stayed out, everyone was going to come in pit. That's what we saw happen. Of course, a lot of folks will also say, well, had they come in, you know, like what we saw happen in the race, they would have. It was just essentially catch-22. It seems like. Is there anything Chase Elliott or any team in that situation where if they pit, they could risk losing, or if they don't pit, everyone comes in? Is there anything that a pit team crew chief could look at to try to avoid a situation like that, or is that just a no-win situation, no matter who it is?
To be honest with you, I was a little puzzled myself when I saw Alan Gustafson calling Chase Elliott to pit because all night long, after studying what had happened up to that point, whoever had a good car and clean air, that they could have just pulled away. And I thought at that point, clean air was going to be more important. And I just believe that Chase Elliott had a strong enough car where anybody else who could have hit it behind him, he could have held them off because the clean air seemed more important than the tires as it didn't fall off like the tire really should have during at a track like this. So yeah, so I think Chase Elliott should have stayed out there, but I'm not a crew chief, and it was Alan Gustafson's calls, and unfortunately, that's just a decision that Alan Gustafson has to live with. But I'm sure Chase Elliott will return to victory lane at some point this season, and then all of that is gonna be a thing of the past, and you move on from situations like that. And as you know well, Joe, in this sport you have to have a short-term memory. You can't dwell on what happened in the last race, or it's just gonna eat you alive, and then you're gonna have problem after problem after problem, and your whole season's gonna be ruined.
Yes, definitely. It seems like Chase always seems to be really good at putting some stuff behind. I know he went out there. Of course, he collected the bounty at the Truck Series race by beating Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch finished in second place. But yeah, it was a good racing weekend at Charlotte. Of course, tonight we got the Alsco Uniform 500K race. It's weather looks like might be an issue. I know Speedway Tribute mentioned that it's a long shot, but it looks like the race there might have a shot of racing that there is a window. I know, and from since you're within the area, how is it looking over there from your perspective?
Well, it's very wet outside, and it's really coming down.
Oh.
I'm located right now in Riesel, North Carolina. It's about 90 minutes away from Charlotte Motor Speedway, and is really coming down here right now. And I was looking at weather reports from Brad Panovich, who's a local meteorologist in the Charlotte area, and it looks like the system, like the main system, might move out of the Charlotte area maybe around 9 10 o'clock tonight. But there's still going to be enough moisture where there might be some lingering showers or even some drizzle, and it's not and it's gonna be too and it might be too cool for the track to dry in time to go racing. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen, or how late NASCAR is willing to wait to get the show in. But as we've seen in the past, in special cases, NASCAR has waited as late as 11 p.m. to get a race going, and we just have to wait and see what they decide tonight.
Yeah, as it's going to be a wait and see, especially with everything going on. I know they definitely will do everything they can to try to get the race in tonight, but definitely weather is going to have the final say, and hopefully we could get that race in. We will be talking more about tonight's race in a little bit of a pre-race section of Grid tonight as well here. One of the things, of course, the grid ranking has been updated since the conclusion of the Coca-Cola 600. Of course, since there's pretty much only NASCAR racing going on, most of the grid ranking has stayed the same. Kevin Harvick's still in third place with 17.81 points. Denny Hamlin is in sixth place with 14.77. Kyle Busch has climbed up to eighth place. Joey Logano's in 10th, and Brad Keselowski is now in the grid ranking with 11.51. He is currently in 12th place right now. I definitely encourage everyone to follow the grid ranking with the hashtag grid ranking. We're hoping once everything does start racing again, especially the IndyCar, Formula One, and MotoGP, which haven't started their seasons yet, we'll have a full active grid ranking as we usually do each season. Now, I know when we come to this Charlotte race tonight, it's only going to be 500K, 500 kilometers. It's only 208 laps, which is essentially 8 laps extra from halfway of the Coca-Cola 600. What kind of urgency are we going to see from all the teams today to try to get up front and stay up front in such a short race compared to the Coca-Cola 600?
Yeah, this goes back to to the comparison I made. I believe the last show about with Formula Two having a feature and a sprint race, and this is definitely going to be a sprint race. That the Coca-Cola 600 was the long feature race, and and the also 500K is definitely is going to be considered the sprint race. So with this, I think we're definitely going to see a more sense of urgency. And I guess you could argue, looking back at the on-track product with the Coca-Cola 600, it definitely wasn't the best race to see at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and maybe a greater sense of urgency. You'll see more action all throughout the field whenever we get the show going.
Yeah, it's only 208 laps. This is going to be a really short race for all the teams as well. Some of the Here's the top 10 starting. We have William Byron on the pole, Alex Bowman. Interesting twist, and definitely want to get your takes on this. Alex Bowman originally fell back to 20th. A lot of people saw this as maybe he did that on purpose to try to start on the pole. Of course, with Jimmy Johnson getting his penalty, that moved Bowman up to 19th, and now William Byron's on the pole. Michael McDowell, Matthew Benedetto, John Hunter Nemechek, Eric Almirola, Austin Dillon, Joey Logano, Cole Custer, and Eric Jones are your top 10. Out of everyone in the top 10, who do you think is somebody to watch today?
I think definitely Eric Jones is gonna be that guy. Since the restart, Eric Jones has been running really well in the number 20 Joe Gibbs Racing team. It seems to really be on it, and they're developing a strong chemistry that I'm sure that they hope to carry throughout the rest of the season. I think Eric Jones is definitely one to watch in the top 10.
Yeah, Eric Jones, he's really been good in that 20 car. He's starting to look really strong. Of course, some of the other nobles, particularly some of the front runners, 15th, Martin Truex Jr., Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, and Brad Keselowski in 20th place. Is a win still in reach for these drivers, considering how short the race is, and with the factor of dirty air and tire wear?
Oh yeah, I think anything is possible. I think that those drivers will definitely be able to move up through the field, whether it's they're able to pass on track, find a way to like during the stage breaks to try to gain track position or whatever, or through various strategies. I definitely think a win could be in reach, but they need to be in the right place at the right time when it's all said and done.
Yeah, some of the final notables starting way in the back. Denny Hamlin, 29th. He had that ballast fall off, that weighted ballast. Of course, he now has some crew members absent for 4 races. Clint Boyer starting 39th. What bad luck, had that rocker arm break. And then 40th, Jimmy Johnson. He looked so strong. Then he got the penalty. Do you think this is something where now Jimmy Johnson's team might be starting to think, okay, we're having all this bad luck issues. Let's try to refocus, regroup, or do you think the season is still early and it's just let's just focus on this race, not think about the past mistakes?
I think it's still very early in the season. We haven't had many races yet so far for obvious reasons. And honestly, it's best to have issues now and get all your bad luck out of the way instead of having that linger on into the summer. And then you get to the late summer and it's almost playoff time, and if you're still having bad luck, that's not going to be good for you having a playoff burst. So I think if you're going to have major issues, get them out of your system now, and then refocus your attention to moving forward. And I know that 48 team has definitely done a great job with doing that in the past. And I expect nothing more in Jimmy Johnson's final full time season as a NASCAR Cup Series competitor.
Now, you mentioned final full time seasons for Jimmy Johnson. One of the things we may have seen the final appearance was Miller Lite. Brad Keselowski did say in his Victory Lane interview that Miller Lite, Miller Brewing might be leaving the team. Of course, we all know Keselowski's not sure where he'll be. A lot of people are now suspecting he might go to the 48. Do you think his performance at the Coca Cola 600 was a really good audition for Rick Hendrick and that 48 slot?
Oh, absolutely, and not just the 48. Any ride that could be open. As we all know, we have no idea where Brad Keselowski is going to be racing in 2021. He could always return to Team Penske. That's always an option. And he's also been heavily rumored to be the new driver of the number 48 Ally Financial car at Hendrick Motorsports next year, or who knows? As you know, Joe, NASCAR silly season, it can get really crazy sometimes, and we'll see drivers go to rides that we never expected. So could Brad Keselowski go to the 48? Yes, it's certainly a possibility. Could he return to Team Penske? Oh, absolutely. Or could he even go to another organization, like say Stewart Haas, for example? With NASCAR silly season, or just or sports silly seasons in general, you just never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, you never know. I know definitely one of the things, Ally, they are going to be a full time sponsor next year in that 48. That's one of the few racing seats where there is a full time sponsor for just about every race, or at least most of the races, where even with Brad Keselowski, Miller, this was their only race appearance, and he's going to be going through several sponsors. Speaking about sponsors, I know one of the big things, of course, earlier back in April was the oil industry that fell into negative stock prices. Now, of course, prices since then have rebounded, but still the oil industry are looking at a lot of issues, including recently Shell are looking at employees voluntarily taking essentially leave and looking for jobs elsewhere. Overall, we're seeing a lot of cuts in the oil industry, a lot of jobs being cut, including in Texas, where thousands of jobs have been lost. A lot of places are looking at scaling back their marketing, their PR. And overall, especially with Shell, they have a huge presence when it comes to a sponsorship deal with Ferrari, Roger Penske in all three of his series, NASCAR, IndyCar, Supercars, World Rally Championship. They're just about in every series, including Formula E. If you were a team, especially a team more involved with the oil industry as a sponsor, is this sort of still a concern? Because we know a lot of folks are saying, well, oil prices are rebounding, but still it's not at the same level. Will you be looking at like the idea of another sponsor just to fill in just in case?
Absolutely. The given at this time in the world, you really need to cover all your bases and watch the situation. Although people are expecting this to get better over time, you still should prepare for the worst case scenario, and not just here in any given situation. You should always hope for the best, but be well prepared for the worst.
Yeah, it's definitely, especially one of the big news we saw as well this week was Hertz car rental are going through bankruptcy and actually liquidation. Of course, they're a sponsor of William Byron and the 24 team. Now, one of the big controversies that started up and has really gotten a lot of international attention started in Formula E. Essentially, what we're seeing is Daniel Abt, who races for Audi Sport and the Formula E team, was participating in an online at-home challenge. What we are now know is he essentially hired an esports ringer, they're calling it, so a professional esports auto racing sim racer, to take his place. Once he was caught, he admitted to it. He paid €10,000 penalty to a charity of his choice. Then the following day, Audi suspended him and essentially terminated him. Since then, Daniel Abt did release a video stating that this was not trying to improve his finishing performance. This wasn't trying to game the system, but just more, in his way, showcase the talent of these eSIM racers and their capabilities when racing against the real professional racers. He did still apologize for all of his actions. Now, with everything that has happened with esports, eSIM racing, do you think this was just something where this is a joke gone wrong, or do you think this is something where it's just a reminder, as a professional race car driver, you are a professional no matter how big of a personality you may have. You got to be careful when you cross the lines, especially with jokes.
With this situation right here, I'm not here to say whether or not Daniel App was right or wrong, or what the viewer should think, but given who Daniel App is, he is a professional race car driver who is under a microscope, and like anyone under a microscope, you really need to be more aware of what you say and do, because unless you're just an ordinary person who doesn't have the microscope, you could do something like that and nobody's gonna bat an eye. But if you're a professional race car driver, you always have to hold yourself at a high standard. And if I'm on here on Grid tonight, just shouting a bunch of profanity at you every episode, I'm sure my editor in chief at the podium finish, Rob Tiongson, he'll catch wind of it, and I would expect to be disciplined by him because when I come on here, I'm representing the podium finish, and no matter where I am, I represent them. Even when I'm on my college campus at UNC Charlotte, if I'm doing if I'm on campus doing something I'm not supposed to be doing, and it and it gets out online, then I'm not only making myself look bad, but I'm making my editor in chief Rob look bad. And I'm making the podium finish as a whole look bad, and I would be making you look bad as well, Joe. So I just think that these race car drivers, after we've seen what happened with Daniel Abt, and then with Simon Pagenaud and Lando Norris, Santino Ferrucci, Kyle Larson, and I'm sure the list could go on and on. And Bubba Wallace with Blue Emu. These drivers, although to most it might seem like a harmless thing, they're representing a lot of people, no matter what they do. And I feel like if Daniel Abt wanted to like pull a joke like that, that is something that he should have discussed with something he should have discussed with his employer Audi at the time, and maybe that was something they could have worked with. Well, not necessarily as a joke, or maybe they could have entered that sim racer to show how he could compete with other professional drivers, so he could show his skills, or they could have just told him no. But I think if Daniel Abt was responsible in this situation, he should have contacted his employer and be like, "Hey, I have this idea. Could we possibly enter this sim racer into our virtual event and see how he compares against real life race car drivers?" And all that he could do is just say yes or no. If they say yes, great, let's get it going. If they move on about your business.
Yes, it's definitely a situation where workplace, and especially when you're a race car driver like this, you are essentially a public figure. So even when they're not on their racetrack, when they're not wearing their uniforms with all their sponsors or their teams, still somebody could recognize Daniel Abt. In fact, Daniel Abt has a huge YouTube channel following. So he was always out there, and a lot of folks were still talking, well, this is part of his channel and all this. But still, it looks like a line was crossing, especially considering Audi's situation. Audi, part of the Volkswagen group, which has a Dieselgate situation, really did not take this joke at all kindly and went ahead and did this action. Now, one of the things, of course, this now means a seat in Audi is open for Formula E. Formula E may only have one more race left, the Berlin E-Prix, but definitely going forward, when it comes to Audi Sport, you got not only championship driver Lucas di Grassi there, Alan McNish. Audi seems to be fully vested in Formula E. Is this one of the top rides you see for 2021, 2022?
Absolutely. As you know, Lucas di Grassi, ever since Formula E has begun, di Grassi has been one of the top Formula E competitors in that ride, and the Audi looks very strong on any given race weekend. And I saw a report earlier today that DTM champion Rene Rast has been rumored to potentially replace Abt at the Audi Formula E program.
Wow. The IndyCar season as well, but definitely, well, excuse me, not only the Formula E season and the Formula One season, season in the IndyCar series. So with the IndyCar,
Can you repeat that question? You froze for a second.
not a problem. Looks like a little bit of technical difficulties, but yeah. So with the news that the FIA has approved this new upcoming regulations and the IndyCar series pursuing Ferrari, do you see where the FIA approval of this regulation with the budget cap and everything is essentially the green light for Ferrari to move to IndyCar?
Oh, absolutely. I think it could certainly be a possibility since there seems to be genuine interest on both sides. IndyCar's been looking for another engine supplier to go along with Chevrolet and Honda, and adding Ferrari, that would be very great. That would be a good thing for IndyCar, especially on the international stage, since Ferrari is an iconic brand known on every continent on the planet, and and also with the new restrictions of the budget cap, teams won't have like Ferrari, that like the employees. I've seen in a report where the employees that they otherwise would have to like lay off completely, they can shift them over to their IndyCar program. So we could see a Scuderia Ferrari Formula One team and a Scuderia Ferrari IndyCar team as well. So we'll just have to keep following this story develop over time and see if Ferrari is truly going to bring an IndyCar program to their stable.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see if that does happen, especially Ferrari. That would be huge for IndyCar as well. They'll still be in Formula One. It's been sort of a surprise considering in the past how Ferrari was just pretty much this way, or we're going to leave Formula One and start our own Grand Prix series. We're going to do our own thing. But now it seems like they have went ahead and sort of, okay, for the better sports, we're willing to do some sacrifices. I know one of the big things that's going to be really exciting to see is what happens, and we will be following this story as well throughout the racing season. Speaking about the racing season, the Grid World Motorsport League is still going on right now as a super season this year, but mainly since only NASCAR has been running and completed the first 5 minimum races, it's mostly all NASCAR drivers. So Kyle Busch did move up to the top of the standings. Harrison Burton, Kevin Harvick, Chase Briscoe, and Austin Cindric now make the top 5 of the Grid World Motorsport League. You can follow them on Twitter with the hashtag Grid WML and then their Twitter handle at Grid underscore WML. So now we're getting to the point where we're getting ready for some NASCAR racing hopefully tonight. I know you said it's still looking pretty wet over there in the Charlotte area. Before we get to the races, any thought on tonight's upcoming race if we get it going tonight?
Oh yeah, I definitely think we'll see a better show whenever we get this race going than we saw during the Coca-Cola 600, where there wasn't really much going on during the race. But I truly believe that with a much shorter race, just with the scheduled distance just over halfway of what would be the Coca-Cola 600, I think we're gonna definitely see a greater sense of urgency, and I think all the action throughout the field will be a little more intense, as with especially the restarts, because with the dirty air, you're gonna have to get as much as you can on the restarts, and you need to have a mistake-free night, hit all your marks, and make sure you're near the front at the end when it counts.
I hear you. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where we're gonna hopefully see something, especially with the urgency factor. I know a lot of folks they didn't seem to really enjoy thoroughly the Coca-Cola 600, and what we're gonna see tonight hopefully will be something new with a sense of urgency. Especially we don't know what's going to happen with such a short distance. Weather is going to be an issue as well. So we'll hopefully see a good race tonight. But other than that, it's just going to be one of those deals where if we could get the race in, see what happens. I know we're really excited about it. For folks that are watching us, in case you're wondering if the race does get called off, what's going to happen? We're going to be looking at essentially hopefully a Thursday race, but then we're definitely going to be checking out, see if there's another day reschedule. Also, a programming note: we won't be doing a post-race episode tonight since it'll be quite late if there is a race. But definitely, we're going to be looking at doing Grid Live again Sunday because NASCAR supposedly is going to be racing possibly at Bristol. Let's just see what happens. And Kobe, it sounds like you got some breaking news.
Yes, I do. Straight from NASCAR itself, tonight's Osco 500 at Charlotte Motor Speedway has been postponed due to weather. The race has been moved to Thursday, May 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on FS1. So no racing tonight.
No racing tonight. And Speedway Tribute just also commented as well too, saying no race tonight. So no race tonight. So that means essentially we're going to be doing it tomorrow, 7 p.m. So definitely, folks, will be following the race. Be sure to follow Kobe Lambeth as well as the podiumfinish.net. Kobe, thank you again for joining us on the program.
Oh, thank you, Joe. It's been a blast being here.
It's been a blast. I know we're a little bit over our time, but the benefit of not being on television, we're not forced to go off the air right away. So on
Absolutely.
behalf of everyone from the Grid Rankin, thank you all for watching. We'll see you all Sunday for Grid Life.